Hello, hello. I am quite late for the Scorpio New Moon, which is on Wednesday. I am again at my wonderful friend's house to record this as I still cannot get into AstroSeek. Um, I think it is a upload download speed problem, and I may have to change my internet provider for it to come right. So, anyway, hence this wonderful creative space that is behind me. And I have not looked at this chart yet. I suddenly realized today that I haven't done this reading, and I've popped over to her house between clients, and I would like to talk about it, but I haven't yet seen it. So let's jump in. It is okay. I've set the chart up for South Africa because of where I live. 28-degree new moon in Scorpio. You can see that on the side here. And again, it is on the 20th. At 8:45 in the morning. Actually, I think the 20th might be early Thursday morning then. Anyhow, what's today, 17, 18? Yes, early Thursday morning if you're in South Africa. So it depends where in the world you live. And remembering that whenever we look at a chart, it can be set up at different places. So, for example, you will see Capricorn on the ascendant here. It may not be that where you live. So don't worry too much about that. Rather go and look at where in your chart is 28 degrees Scorpio, or any of the other things that we speak about today that may show up as closer in your chart. So you really want to look at your chart, okay? So for example, in 28 degrees of, obviously I know my chart quite well, 28 degrees of Scorpio is a number that goes ping, ping, ping to me because that is the degree of my IC, the deepest part, the midnight place in my chart. I know that degree. So I didn't actually realize until right now when I'm looking at this chart with you that this new moon is hitting me at the depth of my chart. So that's going to be something that I'll watch and I'll be curious about. One of the things I've definitely learned over time is not to decide what that means. So when you've been doing astrology for a while and you've looked back to look forward, so you go back and say, oh, when Scorpio new moon hits, this tends to influence this area of my life and these types of topics tend to show up, which you can do over time, and I certainly have done over time. But if you decide, oh, Scorpio new moon always impacts me this way, you are like auto-suggestioning what will happen for you. So rather try to maintain that observer awareness, like slightly removed from whatever happens, and observe, watch, witness, be curious about what life brings your way and how you hopefully are becoming more and more responsive to what life brings your way rather than reactive to what life brings your way. And I definitely feel like working with the astrology over these years has helped that. My hair is in my face, sorry, has helped that to happen for me for sure. And I definitely am somebody who wants to know. So it's like, okay, tell me what's going to happen. Give me a guidebook of how to move forward and what I'm going to be dealing with, and then I will feel okay and safe. And that is air signs, strong people with strong air signs. I am a Gemini, like information to feel safe. Well, particularly if you have an air sign moon, then you're really going to need the information to feel safe. However, what I am proposing, and Scorpio is an interesting sign to propose it under because Scorpio is not air, it's water, it's about feeling. And reflecting and diving deep, because Scorpio is a deep diving sign. It goes right to the bottom of the ocean to get to things. It's always the sign I speak about as looking down with a microscope right into the depths of anything it's looking at. It wants to go to the smallest detail. And it's a fixed sign, so it doesn't always know when to stop. It's like diving and diving and diving and diving and diving. And, well, you've gotten to the center of the earth. Now, how far are you diving? I'm going to keep diving till I come out the other side of the planet. Like, who knows? Scorpio is a sign that is very tenacious and resilient and doesn't really know when to stop. But because it's water, it's a feeling sign. So I want you to feel your way through this rather than intellectualizing or making decisions around what you think is going to show up for this new moon for you. Rather feel into it. How am I feeling about it? What emotions are bubbling to the surface? What emotions, Mercury is retrograde, am I trying to squash right now? And let's bring Mercury retrograde into this. Here at 28 degrees, right there with the sun and moon, we're having a new Mercury season. I didn't even realize that the Cazimi was happening at the new moon. So the Cazimi is when the sun and a planet any planet, come exactly together. Sun, Mercury, exactly together in retrograde is the beginning of a new Mercury season. So it's kind of like a new moon, but it's a new Mercury. So at the same time that we're having the Scorpio new moon, we're having a Mercury new moon. And Mercury new moons happen less frequently than new moons. We have a new moon every month. We'll have a new Mercury every sort of 4 months, I think about 4 months. So it's a slower cycle. And it's not often that you will have a new moon and a new Mercury at the same time in the way that we're having it this month, this cycle. So this is a real time. And if we come back to the topics at hand with Scorpio, it is an exceptionally transformative sign, not afraid to go where angels fear to tread, not afraid to go into the shadows, not afraid to deal with what is toxic, what needs to be cut back. And this is a good opportunity to do that because it's a new cycle for both Moon and Mercury. It's like, right, what is done? What is done? What am I just done with? It's like the phoenix that burns up, reaches that age, burns up from the ashes, and there's now a new little featherless phoenix chick ready to begin again. It's a vulnerable place to be, but it was an inevitable place to come to. And now the world is your oyster. Who knows what's possible? So again, that curiosity. I don't know what this is going to bring. Let me watch and see. Let me be curious and open rather than afraid, because that is a place we tend to go, us people. We tend to start fearing the future, fearing what Scorpio, the scary Scorpio, is going to bring us. But actually, if we think of it alchemizing, and nothing is more alchemical in terms of the zodiacal archetypal signs than Scorpio. It is literally like the grape needs to die for the wine to be born. The grapes that were young and fresh and fruity literally begin to rot and ferment and putrefy until they become this new, robust, totally different profile, but from the same place, wine. So from grapes to wine is a very Scorpionic kind of alchemical process. And that's what Scorpio is. So we are all in very alchemical process right now with the new moon and new Venus. And then where that is in your chart is going to say a lot. So I'm going to go to my roots. I'm going to go right down to my ancestry. I'm going to go to my early childhood trauma. I'm going to go and look at, like, what is it that I'm ready to let go of? What stories, because Mercury is the narrative, what stories just are not that important anymore? Can I let that go? Or do I want to let my emotions get attached to the story? Because when our emotions are involved, it's almost like we re-traumatize ourselves. And I mean, I know this story very well, being a storyteller, a mercurial person, a Gemini, and definitely a chatter. And whenever you tell a story over and over again, you feel the feelings over and over again. And if it's a good story, you're feeling good feelings. And if it's a traumatic story, you're feeling traumatic feelings. And you're just putting that into your body again and again and again. And for those of us with strong air, we may need to talk it out to process, but we also need to be very mindful of the power and potency of our words and how they do connect to emotional feelings, and that does land in our body, and that does create dis-ease ultimately if it's bad things that we're talking about, that we're feeling into again and again and again. And we dysregulate our nervous systems because, you know, animals in the wild, when they have a dangerous situation occur, afterwards they literally shake themselves off, or and then they put their heads down and graze, and they go from fight, flight, flee, freeze to rest, digest, and heal like that. They do not go around telling everybody the scary, terrible, traumatic thing that just happened to them. I nearly died when the lion chased me. They don't do that. We do that. As humans do that. I know I do that. We go over and over and over it. Then we sit there now falling asleep or waking up state, and we're like telling ourselves the story and reliving the trauma and criticizing ourselves for how we handled situations and judging ourselves and judging others, and round and round and round we go. So this Mercury retrograde, where we get to reflect backwards, we get to think about, how have I been narrating my life? What stories do I seem so overly attached to? And can I just let them burn up? Can I be done with this? Again, go look at where that is in your chart. If it's in your 7th house, maybe it's changing some really potent relational dynamics with like your spouse or your business partner, or something in there. If it's happening in your 10th house, perhaps it's a very important thing to do with your work, your career, your reputation. If it's in your 2nd house, maybe there's some deep alchemical self-worth stuff you need to be dealing with. If it's in your 6th house, maybe you're looking at, maybe I'm of service in a way that used to work and no longer does. So, and if you're looking to have a personal reading, so we can look into those questions together and see exactly where these things land in your chart, then please do get in touch with me. But if you know your astrology well enough, if you're starting to get a little more familiar, play with it. Meet yourself where you're at, look at your chart and say, well, all I really know is that 28 degrees of Scorpio is landing in my 9th house. And then you can even Google, what is the 9th house? So it is very nice to have like a coach or mentor guide from the side to work with as a human that you can speak to, not just the AI, but you can get a lot from online. So try work with whatever works for you. So this is a very powerful 28-degree Scorpio. We also have Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, which does mean that this is a micro moon. So the last full moon, Taurus full moon, was a super moon, and now that was closest to the Earth, and now this is furthest from the Earth, this new moon. So Lilith is where we go into the shadows. Lilith for me is exceptionally scorpionic. I love the mythology of Lilith. I've just been working with my story study students around the mythology and the astrology of Lilith. And she also, like that Scorpio energy, goes where angels fear to tread, is completely and fully herself, even if it is outrageous and disturbing. And although I don't know that all of us will be able to reach Lilith potentials, maybe we need to look at, what have I been trying to be very controlled around that isn't who I am? Like, can I break outside of my box or my mold a little bit here? Like, is there something that, and also remembering that it might feel outrageous because it's unknown, it's unpracticed, you haven't got the neural pathways really built in. So let's say you decide you're leaving that job. Actually, I've got this happening in the 10th house. I've been ready to leave, and suddenly the cherry on the cake happens in my job, and I just decide spontaneously, that's it. And that's an unknown pattern. So it's terrifying. You feel vulnerable. You feel like that new Phoenix chick, like, am I safe? What will happen? But you did it anyway, and you start to develop that new neural pathway because our brains like what they know. So the brain will say to you, just stay in this situation because at least we know this situation. Is it toxic? Probably, but at least it's known. Our brains are more afraid of the things that we don't know, even if they're healthy. So when you begin to be outrageous or to change a pattern, it is scary and it does feel completely outrageous. But once you develop that neural pathway, once you work that muscle, it's less overwhelming and daunting and terrifying. And you also feel less vulnerable. It's like your feathers start to come in, your skin starts to thicken a little bit, your natural boundaries and defense systems start establishing, you start to grow, you start to thrive. And then you look for the next thing that needs shedding, cutting, whatever it is, because there'll always be something else, right? That is kind of the nature of life. We have also got Jupiter retrograde in Cancer at the moment. Really, also trine. Trine is a positive combination. So you can see a grand trine in this chart to Jupiter from all of these things going on here to Jupiter, and also from Jupiter to Neptune and Saturn, and then back up to Lilith, Moon, Sun, Mercury. Not quite as far to Venus. Venus is also in Scorpio right now. But basically, we have a lot of water going on this month in this new moon. And when we look at a new moon, we set our intentions at new moon, and we take this new moon energy through until the next new moon, which will be in Sagittarius. So you want to think, okay, what's going on with me now? Where are my emotions now? Can I use my emotions as an intuitive guidance system? And our emotions are an intuitive guidance system. But when you have a grand trine like this, it's like extra power to this intuitive guidance system. And intuition is the knowing without knowing how you know, that spidey sense that kicks in. Like I've got a feeling I should phone someone. And then you phone them and you hear that they've just heard some wonderful news or just heard some terrible news. And they obviously just needed to hear from you in that time. And you can't explain why you suddenly thought of them, or having a dream and then deciding to contact the person in the dream, or to take a little time with your dream, because our dream world is very, very powerful to pull out like our intuitive stuff, to pull stuff from the unconscious and bring it conscious if we work with our dreams. I'm very passionate about working with dreams. And some people don't recall their dreams. And if that's you, then, you know, there are ways to start improving that. But that might not be your start point. If I'm saying, you know, follow your dreams, work with your dreams, and you're like, I don't dream, then just drop that bit of information. What is resonating with you? What does work for you? On the other hand, if you are a big dreamer, maybe you start paying a little more attention to that. So because we've got a lot of water in this chart, and I have been speaking for months and months about how all the outer planets are moving into more masculine signs. Pluto is already very happily fixed in Aquarius. He's only at 1 degree 41 minutes, but he won't be going back into Capricorn after we had a few years of that vacillation. Neptune and Saturn, who's not an outer planet, but the two of them are really doing this dance. I've spoken ad nauseum about that as well in previous forecasts. They are back in Pisces right now, and Uranus has just stepped back into Taurus. So, I mean, Uranus spent he's the fastest, and he spent 7 years in Taurus. Neptune has spent about 14 years in Pisces. We are going to have Pluto. He was 16 years in Capricorn. He's now going to be 20 years in Aquarius. It's not a perfect circle, the orbit. So it's not always the same in each sign. But the point is that we've just had like a dress rehearsal until recently where Neptune and Uranus had moved into their next sign and gave us a flavor of what that might look like. And then they stationed retrograde and they've gone back into the other sign. And the other sign, again, that is the known, because we've now been dealing with that for 7 and 14 years respectively. So even though there were issues there, because that's what these planets do, they help us to excavate things that need excavation. But as they go back there, first it's almost like at least this I know. This feels so much more comfortable than where I was when it moved, purely because it's what I know. And then once we settle into the comfortable old slippers, then we go, oh yes, this did make me super emotional. Oh my gosh, this did mean that it was like pushing a boulder up a hill. And the issues of those signs, Neptune in Pisces and Uranus in Taurus, kind of come back to the fore. And this is our opportunity to do that last bit of work, most likely in our lifetimes, that we will have to do with those signs. Certainly Neptune you won't see I don't think many of us alive, unless we really do start living for 150 years, we won't see Neptune come back to Pisces. And he's moving out in February, and that will be that for our lifetimes. And Uranus is a full circle, is like 85 years. So, I mean, a baby born now might get there, or very young people might get there. But for most of us, we're not going to see Uranus in Taurus again. I think he moves out in March or April. I can't recall. But so the point that I'm making here is that this is an opportunity to drop into the water energy and the earth energy, the more yin, holding space, slowing down, tuning in, because when they all get legs in their fire and air signs, we can already feel the speed of the world. And in these last few months, while we've had this dress rehearsal, quote unquote, we will be probably sitting here. I certainly am going, oh my gosh, how have we gotten to middle of November? I just blinked. And I think that's kind of what we're looking for moving forward. So take this opportunity to pause, to drink deeply from a glass of water, and reflect. Reflect on what's working in your life, what isn't working in your life. Reflect on how you treat yourself. That's huge, because it's kind of like a heal yourself to heal the world thing. So how are you handling you? Reflect on how you are in your relationships, which is usually just an exacerbated thing of how you are with yourself. So if you're unkind to yourself, you might be being overly compassionate to everyone else, or you're unkind on yourself might be spilling out to everybody else. So this is personal. This is personal shadow work. Go into yourself. Find what is and isn't working for you, and see what you see. Be curious, be interested, Be willing to change. Scorpio is a fixed sign. Fixed signs, we don't love to change. But what if? Ask yourself those what if questions. What if I did change 1 degree? What if changing actually made all the difference to me thriving rather than surviving, to me learning to respond rather than react, to me having a regulated nervous system, for me having freedom of movement in my body and my skin and my fascia, to me allowing my emotions to flow through me and roll on so they don't become these driving tidal waves that terrorize me and other people, to change my story if that makes life better for me and the people I come in contact with. What if I could do that by being a little more open to change? So I think I'm going to stop there. I do feel a shift in how these forecasts are going. But there is your energy forecast for this new moon in Scorpio. And I look forward to being with you again for the next full moon, which will be in Gemini. And that will be in early December, I think. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience with my channely engagement with the energy of this month. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.